Professor O'Malley, thank you for the introduction to the introduction here. So I'm JT, and I'll be introducing Pat and Chris shortly. But first off, I just wanted to give a quick little introduction of myself. So I am a senior graduating this semester studying finance, real estate, and history. I've spent the past 3 years in Siegfried Hall, which, depending on when some of you graduated, might have been a women's dorm or might not have been a dorm at all. But like Pat, I played on the basketball team at Notre Dame. I walked on at the beginning of my sophomore year and played under Coach Shrewsbury. Unlike Pat, I might have had a little bit different of a role on the team. I was more known for my scout team defense than I was for my Sports Center top 10 highlights. But all the same, it was a great experience. I made phenomenal friends and learned a lot of great lifelong lessons, which I think Pat has been able to apply. And while my journey in real estate has just begun, it is Pat here who is our keynote speaker and has really applied these lessons learned from Notre Dame athletics and Notre Dame academics into a very successful business strategy. And Pat, as you all know, is a NBA champion with the Milwaukee Bucks, but even more impressively is a successful entrepreneur, CEO, and co-founder of Three Leaf Development. What makes Pat's story especially impressive is how Three Leaf Development uses their mission to transform local communities in the Midwest, especially Wisconsin. And he and I were on the phone a little while ago, and I think a phenomenal case study of this for Professor Johnson's class would be their transformation of a local congregation in Milwaukee, or not outside of Milwaukee, into a brand new apartment complex with a public courtyard and public park. And it's stories like that, which I'm sure Pat will hit on later, that are really impressive and inspiring. I just want to say thank you. And Chris, thank you for moderating this conversation. Chris, if you may know him, is a fellowship member on the Fire Board, as well as on the advisory board of the ACE Catholic Teaching here at Notre Dame. So these guys, give them a warm welcome and round of applause as they're up here.
JT, thank you for the introduction. And my guess is after those introductions, my kids, I got a couple in the audience here, are going to think I'm a little less cool than they used to after this, sitting next to you, Pat.
You had to say more about me because everyone knows you.
But the other, I think, fireside chat lesson I've already learned, particularly after Vince's tech panel and sitting next to Pat, my wardrobe needs an update. All right, well, Pat, let's jump into it. And thank you again for being here. It's truly my pleasure to lead this. But listen, many, JT talked about, many in the crowd, they're familiar with Pat Connaughton, the athlete. We'll get to a little bit of that later, but maybe not as familiar with you as a business leader. Mike talked about it a little bit, but if you can just maybe touch upon how just your interest in real estate, where it came from, and how that journey kind of brought you to Three Leaf Properties.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for having me. Chris has been, a mentor of mine, and I've really learned a lot from him. And that goes without saying. It extends to a lot of you in the room, right? Like, that's the power of Notre Dame. It's been hit on a bunch of times up here, but I want to make sure I reiterate that. That's something that I'll keep coming back to. And then for Mike O'Malley, thanks for having me. As far as Fireside chat goes, I wish there was a fire or something here because it's false advertising, but we'll get to that next year. And I stole that joke from one of Vince's panelists. I won't throw him under the bus. But as far as, and JT, great job on the intro. As far as Three Leaf, for me, real estate kind of started early on. My dad was a general contractor in the greater Boston area. So I know some of you have heard the story, so bear with me. But, I grew up with my best friend who's here, who works for Three Leaf now, and we worked on his job sites. We hauled lumber, sheetrock up and down stairs. We cleaned dumpsters. We did things that, weren't fun. They were, I was going to make a joke about child labor, but my dad is still stronger than I am, so I don't want to piss him off. And I see a camera back there. So point being, it was 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade. Like, we were doing things that was just a job. It just taught us hard work. It taught us some intrinsic values like that. But I think inherently what we didn't realize and subconsciously we were seeing were the projects that my dad was hired to do. That was what he was, that was what provided for our family. But the difference between them when he was hired versus when he finished. And now, again, he was a GC. He was paid to get that done. He didn't share in kind of the upside. However, we got to see, as young kids, this is a house or building in Boston or on the Back Bay, one of the brownstones. This is a place that we wouldn't want to necessarily live in right away, that you wouldn't see on MTV Cribs, which I might be dating myself. But when it was done, it was a place that was like, oh wow, this is really nice. And so I think we slowly just started to see the value creation. We just didn't know from the financial side what that meant. And then fast forward, coming to Notre Dame, I was fortunate to be a product of the undergrad business school. Unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't FIRE, or else I obviously would have taken advantage of it. And unfortunately for me at the time, there was also not NIL. So I kind of circumvented the system. And my dad had flipped the house my freshman year out here over on St. Joseph Street near the golf course on campus. And he did it as an excuse to be out here for the basketball games. I know a lot of you heard Jerome talk earlier. My parents did not miss one single basketball game for the 4 years I was at Notre Dame, home and away. And the reason they were able to do that was my dad made a quote unquote like business decision to get a house flipped out here. That was kind of like an excuse to work while his business was still going on back home. And so, for me going into my senior year, I had just gotten drafted in baseball. I got drafted by the Baltimore Orioles. I was able to accept the $420,000 signing bonus. So while the world of NIL didn't exist, I kind of escaped the system. And I put that into a house over on the Wooded Estates. And I got to see my dad help me fix it up. He really fixed it up. I didn't really do a whole lot. But I just got to see the value creation. I got to see how, a house changed. I lived in it my senior year. And then I was fortunate to go on and get drafted by the Portland Trail Blazers in basketball. We sold the house and I got to see, the increase in value. It was only like $32,000 that was made on the deal, but I at least got to see it. And so when I went out to Portland, same thing, flipped a couple of homes. And at the time, I didn't know how long my professional sports career was going to last. At the time, I was much more likely to be a 10-year MLB pro than I was 10-year NBA pro. But I knew that if I gave basketball a shot early on, A, you make more money right away. You don't go through the minors. And B, if I didn't make it, I had a better chance to go back to baseball than I did go through the minors and try to come back to basketball. So it's a long-winded way of me saying I really took advantage of the Notre Dame Alumni Network and the MBA platform that I had to meet people in the real estate sector. And a lot of you in this room were a part of, really preaching to me, yeah, flipping homes is great, but you have a means of income. You have a day job that compensates you handsomely. Think about the future. Think about duplexes. Think about triplexes. Think about things that you can rent. Think about things that you can own for a longer period of time. And so I jumped into that, my third year in the NBA. I played more my third year. I was fortunate to then sign with the Milwaukee Bucks my fourth year, and slowly but surely just started to really see, one, the value in owning and renting out properties. Two, a lot of my peers needed some education in investing in general, but specifically in the real estate space. And while myself and maybe everyone in this room is biased with some semblance of real estate, aside from Vince, which unfortunately was my roommate for 4 years, I didn't mention that before. He didn't mention it, probably on purpose. It's a slow, steady growth, but with professional athletes, that's beneficial. You have a means of income for 3, 5, 7, 10 years if you're lucky, and then it drops off. So a lot of my teammates took an interest in what was going on. I started to raise some other capital because I realized I could do more projects without just my own capital, since I wasn't on a Giannis Antetokounmpo size contract. And I just quickly started to see the value that it brought them. And then, my dad, he's an Irish Catholic guy from Boston. He doesn't have the most patience. Joe can tell you a few stories about that. And so as he got older and wanted to kind of shift away from the business, I was fortunate to get to know my current business partner, Matt Burrow, who had grown a construction company up to $300 million in revenue, dissolved it into an ESOP, wanted to get more into the development side. And we call it the real business started like 5 years ago, Three Leaf Partners. And we've grown from doing literally duplexes to 39 unit buildings to 53 unit buildings to 62 unit buildings. And over the last 3 summers, we've done a 267 unit building, a 247 unit building, and a couple of 150 unit buildings.
Yeah, well done. Well done. And we'll come back to baseball a bit later. but with Three Leaf, tell us, a snapshot of where you are today. I know the growth. I've got a front row seat to it the past few years. It's been amazing what you and your partners have done. But give us a snapshot as to kind of where you are today, and then as you're just looking forward, maybe 5 or 10 years, what do you want Three Leaf to look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I think it's important to give a shout out to the Three Leaf team. I do have a day job. I play basketball for a living. I'm fortunate to do it. The platform provides a lot of opportunity, obviously the access to capital, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we have 22 employees that work there on a daily basis. They're the ones that make Three Leaf go. They're the ones we have, 3 analysts. We got 4 development leads. We got chief development officer, chief investment officer. We got a head of HR. We got a head of investor relations. Like, we have all of the components, in-house legal, in-house director of tax and accounting. Like, we have all the components that they really make it go. I'm just fortunately the underdressed one up here out of the two of us that gets to be the face of it. But for where Three Leaf is, in 2024, we did $195 million of development. I'd say 80% of what we do is in the multifamily space. It's a little bit of a mixture between kind of the mid-rise product type and the garden style apartment product type. The other, 15 to 20% is in the industrial acquisition space. We've seen a lot of success in sale leasebacks. A lot of companies in the Midwest that are longstanding companies but are looking to private equity to sell in the next 2, 3, 5 years. They want to free up some space on that balance sheet, so they'll sell it to us, but they'll also sign really long-term leases. So we'll look at packaging up an industrial portfolio and inevitably selling it. And then with the multifamily space, for us, we look at a balance of a couple of things. Like, we think long-term holds, we think long-term create value. All the things that we do for the most part right now are development, aside from those industrial acquisitions, but our development, ground-up development. You heard JT kind of allude to it. We do a lot with mission-based organizations, whether it's churches, whether it's schools. My partner, his son is actually a student at Notre Dame now. He is a Lutheran. I'm a Catholic. Like, we work with the Lutheran, the Catholic churches a ton with excess amounts of land. We really try to partner with them. I think that's unique to us. I don't think everyone who's a real estate developer necessarily tries to partner with those institutions. They try to get access to the land, but they don't necessarily look at what those faith-based organizations are looking to further their mission with. So, as JT alluded to, there's a project we'll get into later, just outside of Milwaukee, that we partnered with St. Bernard's Church, and we had partnered with St. Mark's Church a couple of years back for a smaller one of our developments. And so those have been very successful, but also very gratifying because we've been able to see the impact that it's had on those congregations. And then I think for us, the other side of the multifamily development is, a little bit shorter term. As we've started to grow, look, I know everyone sees the contracts that professional athletes sign, but professional athletes don't part with money that easily. They want to be involved, but they all have financial managers. The financial managers are all compensated based off of AUM. They're not always looking towards a private deal to allocate money because it takes money out of their fee structure. So it becomes a little bit harder to raise $15, $20 million equity checks when you're going off $100,000 and $250,000 checks from my peers. So we've looked towards, RIAs and family offices recently. Chris has been a great resource for us with that, with not just his company, but others. And with those, they want to see a track record, right? And we're still in relatively our infancy stage. I mean, Vince and his panel alluded to it earlier. When you're in venture capital, when you're some of the companies that were sitting up here, you can see things more real time. When you're in the development space, as a lot of us know, it'll take 12, 18, 24 months to get a project up and running and constructed, stabilized, and then cash flowing. And a lot of the larger, RIAs and multi-family offices that want to put in larger checks, they want to see a track record, they want to see their money go in, and they want to see it come out. So some of our larger projects will be 5-year underwrites, where we'll really look at, hey, how do we develop it? How do we prove our concept? How do we stabilize it? How do we start showing the cash flow? And then how do we sell it off?
So I think one of the really cool things you've done at Three Leaf, aside from just grow the business while having your day job, is what you have been doing with the local community. We talked about some of the case studies with church properties. It's actually been a case study in some of the classes, as JT referenced. But you've made Irish Nation proud, Pat, as an athlete, as a business leader, but also increasingly as a community leader. Can you talk us about some of your philanthropic initiatives and some of the things that are important to you? Because the things you're doing with some of those non-for-profits, they don't engage with folks that don't share a mission. And I think you're sort of doing it as well away from the business, and I think it also helps your business. But maybe talk a bit about some of the things on the philanthropic side.
Yeah. So multiple things with obviously Three Leaf directly. When we talk about our mission based approach, it is specific to higher ed and those faith based organizations or any not for profit that may be land rich, but they may not be able to be sustainable with the capital that they can raise. After COVID, we saw a lot of those institutions be really struggling, and so they had a lot of land, they didn't know what to do with it. And so one of the ways that we'll partner with them is the land will be put in as equity, right? So that will be cost basis that they have. It'll keep ours low for the deal sakes, but it'll create some revenue for them. It'll create cash flow for them. It'll make them more independent as opposed to dependent, on their congregations or on their, donors. And I think you take it a step further with some of, our employees have great not-for-profits that we partner with. I have one, obviously, that does a lot with the youth sports space, but a deal that we did in Wauwatosa that's being constructed right now, 150 units. I mentioned St. Bernard's earlier. It was a church. It's in a suburb. Wauwatosa is a suburb of Milwaukee, but it's one of the major suburbs. The St. Bernard's Church was located right in the heart of downtown on, little hill. It was a prime piece of property, and because of our reputation with how we had treated St. Mark's and how we had treated some of the other, churches that we'd worked with in the past, they kind of handed us that deal on a silver platter. Now, I say silver platter lightly because the locals and the people who had been there for generations that had seen a church there and a lot of walkable space for the first couple of, community engagements and community meetings that we did, they came out with pitchforks and they weren't really thrilled that we were going to be putting a multifamily development there. But by the third meeting, the mayor and said, "Hey, you guys have worked with us better than any developer we could ever imagined. We put a lot of the recreational space. We made it a real community space. We didn't just go in there and put up a rectangular building that could, be the most profitable for us. But at the same time, we balanced the idea that we have investors in here and it has to pencil. And so we've utilized in other, not that deal specifically, but in other deals, TIF dollars, right? Where we've really worked with the municipalities in two occasions, the 267 unit building in Heartland and the 247 unit building in West Allis. Each of those municipalities granted us the largest TIFs that they've ever granted in history. And part of it was because of our platform, but also because they know that when we're trying to build within their community, we're trying to find other ways to give back within those communities and not just benefit them based off of the jobs created for that development while it's happening. We want to benefit them long term. So back to Wauwatosa, my foundation redid a church for St. Jude's, which is right down the street. We redid a court. Three Leaf helped redo the church that St. Bernard's consolidated into. And all of those are in the city of Wauwatosa. So they saw much more impact than just the impact that our 150 unit development will bring.
Yeah, I mean, I think the upshot is, Pat, you and your partners at Three Leaf is you earn the trust. But maybe just take 1 minute and talk about PCF, your foundation, and what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us in this room, the obvious one is Notre Dame, right? We all have benefited from the University of Notre Dame and everything that the university does, myself included, tenfold, right? I often make the joke that they made me play 2 sports just to get into this damn school. And I made sure I took full advantage of it. And so, but when it comes to sports in general, that's near and dear to me. I've grew up playing sports my whole life. I played every sport I could get my hands on. And so, I've just, for my foundation, I wanted to do something that was organic to me, that was authentic to me. That's kind of the way that I try to do everything. That's why I got involved in real estate. I grew up around it. It was organic and authentic to me, right? Same for my foundation. The whole idea behind it is youth sports is really turning into a business. Some of you may see it that have young kids that are getting into youth sports. I obviously am biased when it comes to the multi-sport part of youth sports, but a lot of coaches at the AAU level or at different levels, they really try to push kids into specializing in a sport at age 7, 8, 9 years old, right? Like I was fortunate. I played 2 sports professionally. I made it as far as you can in 2 sports, but I see so many kids get pushed into it at an early age, and they always hide behind the fact you'll get better at that sport if you play it 365 days a year. And somebody else is doing it, and you need to be doing the same thing somebody else is doing if you want to compete at the highest level. And yeah, there is a component that if you played something or did something 365 days a year, we all know in this room that you'd get better at it. But at that age, what they're not looking at is the impact that it has, the stunting of growth with regards to hand-eye coordination if you're put in different situations, the athletic development if you're put in other situations, the social component when you're on different teams in different sports, playing with different players from different cities, different areas. And so my foundation's real goal is to kind of to combat that, right? We want not to find the best basketball players in the country. We want to teach the translatable life skills that go along with sports. And we use basketball as that vehicle. And we do it through, camps and clinics. We do it through court refurbishments, which you just heard me allude to. In Wauwatosa, we partner with schools or, after school, community centers, the Boys and Girls Clubs, different ones that don't have the financial ability to put forth a court that can be utilized for more than just basketball, or it's a court that just needs to be redeveloped, but they don't have the financial ability to do so. But if they did, and if we come in and partner and donate that money towards them and help them redo their court, well, now, and we've seen it, instead of having 10 kids, 20 kids come after school every single day, all of a sudden it's 50, it's 60. Instead of just having a basketball program, they have a volleyball program. They have an after-school volunteer club. They have a kickball program. And so the foundation, we've done 26 courts to date. We got 10 underway this year. By the end of the year, we'll have 36 courts. We've donated about $4.3 million to the initiatives. And the biggest thing is we've really seen the impact that it has on student athletes really getting out there, getting active, but also, teaching them those translatable life skills.
Pat, I think you need to clone yourself so we can get that message out even faster, but amazing work, really. Let's go back to a topic you mentioned earlier, pro athletes and investing. Back in the day, I think athletes were known more as spenders than investors, right? The flash car, the bling on the wrist, and investing would often be a speculative investment, maybe in a oil and gas line that didn't even exist. You'd hear those horror stories all the time. You have been part of this evolution where athletes are becoming properly informed professional investors, and I'd say you're sort of at the cutting edge of that. Can you tell us a couple things? One is, how have you advised some of your peers on the court about investing, and how have you just seen this evolution move to athletes just getting more, I would just say, properly informed about investing their capital?
Yeah, it's a hot topic. I don't know if any of you have seen the 30 for 30 broke. It came out probably 10, 15 years ago now, but I saw it when it came out, and it talked about Antoine Walker. It talked about Vin Baker, who is an assistant coach in Milwaukee, who I've been with for my last 7 years, who does an incredible job of using his story to help prevent it to happen to other professional athletes. But at the end of the day, professional athletes, and look, we are grateful to be able to do what we do for a living. Let me start there to make sure there's no confusion. But at the same time, it's unlike any other profession. You are, as an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, dumped a lot of money on you. You only have a career. The average NBA career is 4 years. I think the average NFL career is like 3.5. If you're lucky, I just finished year 10, going on year 11. But, I mean, even LeBron, right? He's playing at 40. Tom Brady played at 44. But as a lot of professionals in this room know, 40, 44, you're coming into earning more money than you ever have in your professional career, right? Like, it's slow growth. Whereas with athletes, you're making all your money and then you're expected to make that last, no matter if you play 3 years, 10 years, 20 years. And there's not necessarily an educational component, right? And we're all biased in this room, so I'm speaking to the choir, but there's not a lot of places like Notre Dame that help educate their athletes on the business side and on the life side. And so what I saw early on in my professional sports career was just guys that had interest in things outside of sports. And it was just probably past where, not that there weren't still some that spent all their money on cars and watches and jewelry and things of that nature, but it was probably just past that where the majority were looking at investments. They were starting to think, okay, if I'm not one of the top 3-4 earners on the team, I got to look at other things outside of basketball for whenever my career comes to an end, and inevitably try to find ways to make more money. And so then it just became, and in today's day and age, I think it's becoming, okay, now what are those investments you're looking at? Because a lot of times, and this is where, selfishly I benefited from it, was you have guys trusting people that are coming from a similar perspective, right? So they're trusting their friends from growing up. They're trusting people that maybe don't have the expertise in whatever it is that they're talking about, but those people know that the athlete has access to capital, but the athlete doesn't have an idea on how to vet deals of that nature. So what I kind of saw was, in the locker room, they would inherently trust me more than they would the person from Goldman Sachs that the NBA brought in to talk to us. Well, I was trusting the guy from Goldman Sachs more than I was trusting myself. But you started to see, like, some can and have an interest in talking to people from Goldman Sachs. Some can and have an interest in talking to those that the NBA and the Players Association do a great job of bringing in at rookie transition, that do a great job of bringing in, at the yearly PA meetings and at the, TAM meetings, team awareness meetings that we are mandated by the league to have. But the majority don't. The majority, if the topics or if the depth of the conversation goes over their head, they immediately look down at their phone. They don't want to put themselves in a vulnerable situation and ask questions and say, I don't understand that, because they're experts in their field of basketball, right? Step out of your comfort zone, you're not necessarily in a comfortable position. And so a lot of them would just kind of defer. And look, the fact of the matter is they make a lot of money, so they don't have to. But if they don't think differently, then someday they may find themselves in a tough spot. So anyway, I say all that to say, a lot of times they would come to me and see that on planes I was reading books or sending emails, see that in hotel lobbies I was meeting with a Notre Dame alum that was, in that city that we were playing in the next night. And they just start to ask questions. And I mean, inside story, when you're on the planes, like, and if you're ever fortunate to be on a plane of a professional athletics team, there's a lot of cards that get played. And at the front table in the front of the plane, there's a lot of cards that get played with large amounts of money. But in the way the Milwaukee Bucks was set up, like, there was still a front table that played cards and gambled, but there was a back table, a table that, Giannis, myself, a few guys that came in and out of our team played at, that you played for $2, you played for $5. But it was more about the conversation that was going on. And what I quickly learned was, in those settings, in those quaint settings where they feel more compelled to ask questions and more comfortable not knowing the answers to the questions that they're asking, was where the education took place. And that was part of the stuff that I've enjoyed most. So with what we're doing at Three Leaf, a lot of times we'll have athletes come and throw on the hard hat and walk around the construction site. We'll send out monthly construction reports, because when I sat on the other side of the table as an investor, sometimes you invest your money and you get a quarterly report that's got a bunch of numbers and facts on it, but you don't really hear from that, investment shop until the project's done. And so these guys started to see pictures of the framing going up, pictures of the drywall going in, pictures of the pool getting filled, and things of that nature that, our marketing guy does a tremendous job doing. And they really valued that. They really felt like they were a part of it. They could see it and say, hey, I own part of that building and I get a return as that building. And so, long-winded way to circle back to Chris's question is, I think athletes are getting better about their money and investing. But Chris and I had a conversation the other day, is you can lose your money easily as quickly, if not quicker, with bad investments as you can spending it on cars and jewelry. So that is, I think, the next turning point for the modern athlete, as a lot of people in the NBA call it, is it's about what you're investing in. It's about understanding that you don't have to take the same competitive nature to the investment game. If I'm sitting in the locker room and I'm interested in real estate development, and I got 4 other teammates that are interested in real estate development, doesn't mean we all have to have 100% ownership of 4 different properties. If we all have 25% ownership of 4 properties, we're going to be incentivized to make those properties grow. We're going to align our interests, and that's where I've kind of seen the most success.
Yeah, and I think the reality is those discussions and that awareness is going to be happening even earlier with NIL, with athletes, which I know Mike is already seeing firsthand here at the university. All right, an obvious question everyone's thinking. Pro athlete, business leader, community leader. Where do you find the time?
Oh, look, it's time management, but Notre Dame, again, I know I've given a lot of shout out to Notre Dame, but my parents in Notre Dame, they really helped me, since the beginning. But playing two sports at Notre Dame, and it ain't LSU where you don't have to go to class. So playing two sports, and I thought I'd give a little jab at Brian Kelly. Playing two sports,
Perfect.
yeah, playing two sports at Notre Dame and having to go to class, like you learn to manage your time very quickly. I made the joke earlier to somebody else. I'm in season in the winter for basketball. I'm in season in the spring for baseball. My busiest time of the year was the fall. Both teams expected me to be at practice to some capacity. Obviously, you have a heavy class load. With basketball starts before fall breaks come, so that was my busiest time. So when I jumped into it my freshman year, like I had to go. I had to figure it out right away. As I mentioned, Vince was my roommate for my time here. We met at summer school before my freshman year. So I really utilized summer school to my advantage. I took the hard classes. I got them out of the way. It lightened the load during the year sometimes, or if it didn't, I was ahead going into the next year. So I was fortunate. I was able to graduate in 3.5 years. Technically, I left a half a credit over because if I didn't, they would have made me take 12 credits going into that spring semester to be eligible to play for the NCAA tournament. But they weren't going to punish me if I was like ahead of schedule and only had 0.5. So I took a week class and then I was done. But summer school really helped me, and it was really about managing time. And I think for me, my professors, I really tried to communicate with them, really asked for their help. My classmates, the classmates here were super helpful. And if you showed that you cared, you showed you wanted to be there, if you showed up, all of the things that, we know goes into being a Notre Dame student, let alone a Notre Dame student athlete, then they wanted to help see you succeed.
Yeah, and there's, when Pat and I were talking before this chat, we, to Pat's credit, one of the things he talked about was lessons learned across that whole spectrum as an athlete, business leader in the community, and just how important that's been to him. And then also him sort of getting that message across to students at Notre Dame, which increasingly seem like they're perfect in many ways, which nobody is. But maybe you could just share some of your lessons learned along the way that have helped get you to where you are today.
Yeah, look, that's apologize stupidly. I should have named that in the translatable life skills. Athletics teach us to overcome adversity, right? Adversity is part of life. You're not going to win everything. You're going to try. You're going to get up the next day, but at the end of the day, like it isn't the result. It isn't the destination you should be aspiring to get to. It's really the journey that gets you there and learning from your mistakes. And so when Chris and I were talking the other day, like I sit up here and you guys hear about all of the best things that we're doing, but we're not perfect. When we started Three Leaf, we were involved in a bunch of different asset classes. We were involved in hotels. We were involved in, a greenhouse. We were involved in different things because we wanted to diversify within real estate. We thought that was the best way to mitigate risk, when in reality, it wasn't. It was find your lane, find what you're good at, and stick to that. And then we dwindled it down, and we end up now where we're sitting here doing 80% multifamily and 20% industrial acquisition, right? And so we learned from our mistakes early on with deals that didn't go as well. Fortunately for us, most of those deals were done with our own money, and so investors didn't have to bear the brunt of those. But it was just something that we were able to learn from early on. It goes the same with sports. It goes the same with anything in life. I feel like it's not about avoiding the mistakes. It's about learning from the mistakes. It's not about figuring out who made the mistake. It's about collaborating to try to make sure the mistake doesn't happen again and to fix it. And I think having that perspective, and it really was ingrained in me from a young age. Like, look, I wasn't at any point in my life, if you saw a picture of me, which Joe can attest to, if you saw a picture of me in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I had one too many Twinkies. I was a short, chubby kid. Maybe not that short, but I was a chubby kid. And I was never supposed to be a Division I college athlete, let alone a professional athlete. But it was my dream, like blowing out the candles on my birthday. I wanted to be a two-sport pro athlete. I said it every year. I can say that now because it happened. And so, like, I always understood that while you have a long-term goal in mind, it's the day by day. And I didn't win every single game at any point in time. Now, because I came back from those losses, learned from them, and really tried to compete and be better the next day, I've been fortunate to be on a lot of winning teams. And I've been fortunate to be I'm not going to say the common denominator, but there is a common denominator there on those winning teams. And I think for me, that's where I see the most, value is learning from your mistakes, not being perfect.
So maybe we'll pivot from mistakes to some of your most memorable achievements, right? You've done a lot, right? Sports, business, community. What are one or two that stick out to you?
Look, winning the school's only ACC championship here at Notre Dame. Obviously, I wish we got to the Final Four. It still bugs the excuse my language out of me. That we lost to Kentucky that year. That will segue me into winning an NBA championship and being, an integral part of that, being one of the only guys to average 30 minutes a game throughout that run. I got Devin Booker back for losing to Kentucky, which was nice. And like the sports, achievements are awesome because they're real-time results, obviously, and it's what, I dreamed of since I was a kid. But I think, the achievements that mean the most to me are the collaboration with my team at Three Leaf, right? And the collaboration with the Notre Dame alumni and the current Notre Dame students. We work with Mike and Gino here to make sure we have a Notre Dame intern every single year. We're working to make sure that we have, multiple Notre Dame employees, and we're working to make sure we joint venture partner with other Notre Dame alumni who have real estate development shops. Our goal is to surround ourselves with good, like-minded individuals. And I think every single mentor I've had always had said to me, which I didn't realize the true value in it, is there's a ton of ways to make money. Make sure you're doing it with good people you want to be around. Because life's too short to do it with people that you don't enjoy being around, and oftentimes those deals don't work out anyway. So I think for me, it's most proud of our team at Three Leaf, working with the Notre Dame alumni and the Notre Dame students and recent alumni, and continuing to collaborate and work with the professional athletes that I have. And it culminates to being able to sit here in front of you and talk. I think I'm very much underqualified to be up here. I think Chris holds that qualification high for both of us. But the only reason I'm up here is because of the people that have kind of helped me get here, the people that work with me on a daily basis. And so to be able to be up here, thank you for, hopefully enjoying some portion of this conversation. I know we're going to open it up, I think, to Q&As at some point, but to be here for the weekend, to come full circle, is a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. And maybe before we go to Q&A, the first time I met Pat, and you probably don't even remember this because you came off a red-eye flight. I think it was 7 years ago. It was at a Brewers game, actually. And Maddie, my son, who's a sophomore, I think he was in 7th grade. And it made his year, right? Meeting you, and we hung out a little bit. But the thing that I didn't realize is that Pat was such an accomplished baseball player. Now, do you still have a baseball agent?
I do, yeah. My baseball agent actually is Jeff Samardzia's brother. So Sam Samardzia, he recruited me early on in baseball because, and I went with him because of his experience with two sports, right? Jeff went the two-sport route. He had represented Russell Wilson on the baseball side of things for the two-sport route. So, technically I still have a baseball agent. Technically, I'm still under contract with the Baltimore Orioles. We
know a guy over there, by the way.
Yeah. I never went back. After obviously, basketball has kind of worked out. So they went to Commissioner Manfred and they asked to put me on what's called the exempt list, which essentially paused my time. So as some of you may know, like baseball, your rookie contract, they have the rights for 7 years, but it paused my time because they did pay me. But I did go play for them, so they couldn't ask for the money back. However, I'm still, if I ever went back, I'd still have to go to the Orioles.
So, and you were a pitcher, right?
Yep.
Fastest fastball was what? Timed at what?
98. So
wow.
I wanted to get to 100. That was one of the things I haven't been able to do, but I could throw it hard. That was my right arm, the ability to throw it hard. That was what drew scouts to me with baseball. I didn't know where the hell it was going a lot of the time, which ironically worked out with the the batters that were standing in the box were a little bit wary of it. But that was what I had to work on, was control.
And maybe tell the group, I think they'd be interested to hear, because it's a great story about the last time you made the first pitch at the Brewers at AmFam Park, how that went.
Yeah, so my first year in Milwaukee, I came in on a vet minimum non-guaranteed deal. I had just gotten waived by Portland. And the short version of the Milwaukee or the basketball part of the story is I worked my way into playing a bunch of games, and come playoff time, I was playing 20, 25 minutes a game. We smoked Detroit in the first round. We sweep them. I had a pretty good series. We played Boston Celtics in the second round. I'm from Boston. Danny Ainge was two-sport guy, a guy who I looked up to. They had numerous opportunities, not just to draft me, but also to sign me in free agency, in which they didn't do it. So I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. We lost the first game. I played horribly. After that, I played pretty well, and we won the next 4. So I had a few dunks. And so long story short, the Brewers said, hey, you used to play baseball. You're playing well in the playoffs. It makes sense. Will you come throw out a first pitch? I said, absolutely. And so the talk going into the first pitch was, you better not lob that thing over the plate. Like, you better show that you can still throw it. And I said, you know what? Fine, I'll do that. So I got there early. I warmed up. I started to get my arm loose, and I took the mound. I threw it from the mound. And so I get up there. They announce it. I get ready. I throw the pitch. I let it go. It was probably like 86, 87 at the time, which was less than I wanted it to be. And my thing in baseball wasn't just I could throw hard. It had a lot of movement. And that was what scouts, I didn't realize it had a lot of movement. It was just how I threw it. It wasn't like I threw a two-seam. It was just my four-seam fastball had a lot of movement. So scouts loved it, which I didn't realize until I got to the pros. Well, I saw the movement on this one. I forgot. It had been a couple of years, because that was my 4th year. It had been a couple of years since I threw from the mound, so I let it go. I didn't really get down on it, and it takes off, and it's sailing. And I'm looking at it, and it felt like it was in slow motion. I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, I'm going to hit our social media girl. And I'm watching it, and it sails right over the catcher. It's high and right, and it's moving. And to her credit, she's doing her job by doing the video. She has a video of that thing whizzing by her head. She did not flinch. She had no idea the ball went like this far from her head. It ended up on SportsCenter, not Top 10. Scott Van Pelt had me on and interviewed me and gave me a hard time about your pants were too tight and you haven't been doing this in a while. And but fortunately, my concern was the well-being of that woman, and she was fine.
Well, I need to thank Joe, your hometown buddy, for that one, because he reminded me of that right before we came up. That's a great.
I haven't done
story.
a first pitch since. They haven't invited me back.
Well, listen, before we open up to Q&A, Pat, I just want to say thank you, not only for being here, but for being who you are. It's an amazing story. It's one where you not only represent your family well, but the university unbelievably well. So well done.
Thank you.